Hey y'all, welcome back to Zen for Men. My name is Dr. Greg Donahue, and today we are tackling authenticity. So, the word authenticity has become more popular over the last few years, primarily because people want something that is real, authentic. So many generations past, there's been an emphasis on behavior. You got to act right, you got to look right, you got to talk right. There are codes of conduct and expectations of behavior that this is how you act, don't deviate from that, or else we're going to kick you out. You don't belong. So we all felt this sense of, I need to act a certain way either to make my peers happy or to make my parents happy or both in order to keep my connections with these people, which automatically is a breach from authenticity. I love the work of Brene Brown. She has a phenomenal study of the topic of vulnerability, which is, in my mind, very synonymous and cohesive with authenticity. But in her study of vulnerability, she talked about the difference between fitting in and belonging. Now, with fitting in, we have to change ourselves or act a certain way that may not be in accordance to our automatic self in order to fit in. But it's ironic because belonging, which is what we're all looking for, assumes that we are already one with them without having to change a thing. So, whereas fitting in, everything that we do, it makes it impossible for us to belong because as soon as we change ourselves, you can't belong anymore. Once you change yourself to fit in, belonging becomes impossible because belonging is about fitting in exactly as we are. With authenticity, it is the idea of not needing to change ourselves. But here's the thing, I think we would all admit that some of the things we're doing, we don't even like. We act and behave in certain ways because we've had to survive another context and we've had to change ourselves. Sometimes moving towards authenticity is changing how we're currently behaving, because sometimes how we're currently behaving is not what we authentically would have done in the first place. It's how we've learned to behave so that we could survive an unhealthy context. That's why this becomes muddled. Authenticity in most relationships, you get the sense that the person isn't being themselves, isn't being true to what they're feeling in that moment. So let me break this down into a simple component. In my own marriage, I was authentically hardworking, giving. I was authentically accommodating. I am more of the people pleaser personality type, so y'all may not directly connect with that specific component, but in my life, and it was authentic. But where it breaches away from authenticity as a concept is it wasn't the whole picture. There was a part of me that felt neglected, a part of me that felt misunderstood, overworked, unappreciated. That part I didn't want to show. I thought that that would break my relationship. I was being authentic with a part of me that I thought the other person would approve of. But there was another part of me that was just as authentic that I was hiding. That is what most people are trying to draw attention to when they say you're not being real, you're not being yourself. They can tell, my wife could tell that I was holding back a portion of what. Now, the fear for my wife became that all of the nice stuff that I was doing was the lie, and that the real me was this part over here that was upset, hurt, resentful, self pitying, all of that stuff. That's not entirely accurate, but I understand the fear. What was really happening is I was cut and pasting the parts of the real me that I thought she would approve of and cutting out the parts of the real me that I thought she would disapprove of. They're both the real me. The nice guy and the resentful guy are both authentic. But where it strays away from authenticity is when as soon as I hide a part of myself, then I'm being inauthentic. And specifically when I'm being nice as a method of hiding my resentment. Or if I, so for instance, when my wife gets sick, I am stressed out by that because it means I have to do more around the house. Instead of saying, man, that's really stressful that you're sick, I'm kind of overwhelmed by everything, that's authentic. Instead, I say, what can I do for you? I want to make sure you feel better. You're my total priority. I want to make sure you get feeling better as soon as possible. No, I'm not bothered. No, I can handle it. Don't worry about it. So it's still authentic in that I do care. Obviously, I care and I want her to feel better. It became inauthentic as soon as I was hiding the stress, as soon as I was hiding the anxiety, and even the I don't want to do all of this stuff. Sometimes I secretly wanted my wife to say, hey, you know what? I appreciate you taking care of me, but why don't you take a break? Authenticity requires showing all of the authentic parts of us and not picking and choosing what we think the other person is going to shame or approve of or disapprove of. Authenticity means I am not cut and pasting different parts of my feelings based on the other person. Now, there are ways of framing my more negative thoughts and feelings in a way that is not blaming the other person. That's something I was famous for. I would take that, what I call the shadow part, it's based on Carl Jung's work, the shadow part, and I would say, all right, I'm resentful because she's not thinking about how I feel. She is not worrying about me enough. I'm spending all this time thinking about her, and she doesn't even care how I feel. That is normally how I come across when I do finally express myself, and it's no wonder she reacts terribly to that. The reality is, I need to take ownership for the things I haven't been saying. There's plenty of my feelings that if I had expressed them earlier on, they would have probably been received a little bit better. So taking ownership of that is an important part of this, rather than just saying the other person is the reason I'm not being authentic. No one else should ever be the reason why I am not myself. If they want to react terribly, I should be willing to hold them accountable for that, not pull back myself. That is my rant on authenticity. Brief takeaways would be authenticity requires us to not hide a part of ourselves. We may be authentically one way, positive, and authentically negative, but it's the breach of authenticity when we pull one of those parts away. I like to refer to it as the shadow self based on Carl Jung's work. So do not hide your shadow self. That is a breach of authenticity. Instead, what we do about it is we take the shadow self and we share it with someone who is not as emotionally involved. So for me, a bunch of guy friends, I'm involved in a 12-step program. So I will take it to my 12-step guys and share the shadow part with them. So by the time I get back to my wife, I actually have a little bit more emotional honesty and I'm not as blamey about the whole process. I've had some appropriate ownership, but I've also had my feelings validated. The second most important part of this is to accept that any emotions of the shadow self are actually important, beautiful parts. So for me, my shadow self, the part of me that can get resentful, the part of me that can get angry, or even self pity, that is a part of me that wants to get my needs met. It wants me to stand up for me. My shadow self holds a strength and a creativity and a self attunement that I need in my life. If I get rid of that part, I become an accommodating automaton. I go into what I call compliance mode, where I'm just going to comply with what anybody wants me to do. Our shadow selves hold amazing strength and creativity and attunement within ourselves. If you've ever had trouble entering the flow state, try checking into some of the shadow self emotions, and I think you'll probably find it. Dive into the darker emotions and find the good parts of the darkness. And then figure out why those parts of you are so resentful. Why are those parts so angry? Not only based on what other people have done, but even how you grew up, how we treat ourselves. I know my shadow self was angry that I neglected myself for so long. So I hope that gives you some more insight into authenticity and maybe a part of the shadow self as well. Here's to being more authentic, the real us and the whole us, not just parts. Take care, y'all.